What is up, guys? I am very, very glad to have you here because I'm going to tell you that this is easily going to be one of the most important videos that you're going to find on my channel. This is part one of a series to teach you that there is an alternate path that you can go down in life, which in my opinion is going to be much more financially beneficial to you if you do than just settling for working 40 hours a week at a job and doing that until you're 65 in hopes of, at that point, maybe then you can retire. That's not even guaranteed in today's day and world, but hopefully when you're 65 you can, and then you can live for yourself at that point. You can have your own free time and you can truly be free. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to what this alternate path is because I refuse to wake up one day and be 65 years old and have the better years of my life behind me. And then what? Be free for the first time and start living my life at 65 years old? I don't settle for that. So there is an alternate path that I'm going to teach you guys today, and the reason why this is easily one of the most important videos on my channel is because I'm going to teach you a principle in this one video that you can take and you can not watch any of my other videos after it. This one principle, you can absolutely create your own financial independence from it, because there is one principle that you need to know which can create all of it. What the other videos are going to be, though, is the other videos are going to be a resource to help cut down on any potential mistakes you might make along the way. I've been walking this alternate path myself for coming up on 10 years now, and I've learned a lot along the way. So it is a more intricate concept, and it is very in-depth. Even though I'm going to give you a very simple principle, it can be broken down into much more complex terms where there are going to be things along the way that you need to learn. There's going to be lessons that you need to learn in order to walk the alternate path more successfully. And so what the other videos on my channel are going to be, they're going to be something that can help shortcut that process for you. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and walk this alternate path as successfully as possible to get to the goal of not having to work a job anymore and truly having your free time for yourself in as short amount of time as possible, because that is the goal. The goal is to find real freedom. So first off, I want you guys to understand that nothing in this video is financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Everything in this video is simply what I've learned through lots of years of self-education and hard work. And what I would suggest is for you to use this video as potential educational content that can then empower you to think in a different way. Hopefully in a way where you can take responsibility for your own financial life, and this education can empower you to be able to make decisions which are going to have bigger benefits on your life than the decisions that you've been making in the past from working 40 hours a week at a job. So there is one book above all others. When you look into researching financial independence, how to create generational wealth, I promise you guys, you're going to hear one book come up more than any other book. And there's a very good reason why. It's estimated that this one book has led to more first-generation millionaires than any other book. And this book is very well known for causing people to have a mental shift in the way that they think, and almost an awakening of sorts. And roughly 10 years ago when I first started researching financial independence for myself, and I picked up this book for myself, it absolutely had that effect on me. So I'm very glad that you guys are here, because it's evident proof, just being here, that you're having some thoughts as far as being unsatisfied with where your life is at financially. Your mind is probably open to the idea that there could be a better way of going about things. These are the same kind of ways that I was thinking in my early to mid 20s when I first, made the decision to research financial independence. And this book ended up being the number one resource, which has radically changed my life ever since. So I'm going to give you a synopsis of this book. I'm going to break it down into 3 different key parts, but I would also like to stress beforehand that even though I'm going to summarize this book for you, it's vitally important to actually pick this book up for yourself and to read it, because this 25 minute video, whatever it ends up being, is not going to be sufficient to reading 300 pages in a book and all the information it contains. Because when you read this book, you're going to understand the concepts that I'm teaching you today on a much more in-depth level. And in addition to that, it's going to be something that's very, very motivating for you. This book is known for being highly motivating for people, and it kind of charges them in a way that's very important to taking the first step of walking an alternate path. Because we're not talking about something here that's a decision that is what you're going to eat today, or where you should take your partner on a date. This is a major decision in your life to try and do something different financially. That's a very scary decision. The vast majority of us only know how to get money by working a job, and when I'm telling you that I think that's not the best decision to make for your future, it's very scary to step off of that path, because you have to have a real confidence that whatever path you're stepping on in opposition of the path that you got to have confidence that at least you're going to have a roof over your head. We're talking about money here, which directly relates to your ability to survive in reality. So reading this book, it's going to give you the motivation that's very important to actually taking the first step and stepping onto what I believe is a more beneficial path to walk down. So please hear me when I say, don't just settle for this video and the summary that I'm giving you. Go out and pick up this book. And I tell you what, at the end of this video, if you make it to that point, I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse. All right? I'm going to make it very easy for you if need be. So what the book is it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And first off, Robert Kiyosaki is a man that I greatly respect. I've read multiple of his books. He has his own podcast. I've listened to his podcast many times. He has his own Twitter, which you can follow. I follow his Twitter. And what I can say about Robert Kiyosaki is, my opinion is, he's absolutely a person that cares about the right things in life. And what that is people above all else, above money, above any issues. His priorities are trying to do what's best for other people. And that's something that, sadly, I believe has become very rare in society. And I think when you read this book, that's going to become abundantly clear to you that Robert Kiyosaki truly cares about your future, and that's only going to give you that much more confidence in the things that you're going to learn from it. So I want to take a second to read some of the things that appear on this book. On the front, it says Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not. Then on the back by USA Today, it says Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a starting point for anyone looking to gain control of their financial future. Both of those statements I absolutely agree with after reading the book. I think that they're spot on, and if those statements sound exciting to you, I hope it only encourages you more to pick up this book. So let's dive into the synopsis. What Rich Dad, Poor Dad is, first off, from the name of that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a true story of Robert Kiyosaki growing up, where he describes a story where he sort of had two fathers. He had a father which he called Rich Dad, which was actually not his bloodline father. It was the father of his best friend growing up. And he had Poor Dad, which he refers to, which was his actual bloodline father. And both of these fathers were giving him advice growing up, which was very much in competition with one another. And Robert Kiyosaki was in a position that was not easy for him as a child. You know, he's getting advice from his real father, which is one thing, and advice from a different father who was creating an empire for himself at the time, but he wasn't, just like obviously rich. So you can imagine for a kid, like it's hard to weigh that out. Like he sees both of them doing work, and they're both giving him advice, but there's no real clear indicator on which advice is necessarily the right advice. Well, he dives into those aspects, and the very key principle that comes from everything that ensues in that story is the aspect and the principle that tells you what the actual alternate path is. So I'm going to break it down into three different things from here. I'm going to tell you what the alternate path actually is, and then I'm going to give you two different ways of examining that alternate path further, which can kind of reinforce the very first principle of how to walk the alternate path. So what this book ascribes is that there is very much so, in a sense, I like to call it a cooking recipe. It's a cooking recipe because there is a path. There is a set amount of things that you can do that if you follow the directives of the other path, if you do a specific set of things, it will absolutely produce the results in your life of creating financial independence. What is a cooking recipe? You put ingredients in, you follow some specific instructions, and you get a cake. I'm telling you, what this principle is it's a cooking recipe. It is that clearly defined, and it's something that can be easily understood once you hear it. It's not something that you were taught about in schools growing up, but it's absolutely something that once you hear it, it should click. And if you follow it, it will produce the results that it has done for everyone else along the way. And for me, when I look at the first point when I read this book, in my early to mid 20s, knowing that, realizing that the advice it gave me is very much in the sense of being a cooking recipe, that was incredibly empowering. It took all of the chance and all of the luck out of doing something different and hoping that it paid off for me. It really set in that I'm not just throwing a Hail Mary. if I follow this principle, it's going to generate the results that I want for my life. And it absolutely has since then. So I won't hold you up any further. I know I've probably built this up a lot. So here's what the principle is. If you want financial independence in life, it is all about how you spend your money. If you want financial independence, you have got to buy assets and not liabilities. So let's define what those are. In simple terms, an asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. Conversely, a liability is simply anything that takes money out of your pocket. Most people never buy an asset in their entire lives. The world that we live in is always marketing liabilities to people. That shiny car that you want, that big house with the white picket fence that's modern and updated, and it's going to bring you the happiness that you see it bringing all your friends. Everywhere you look, turn on the TV, look at a commercial. Whatever's being advertised to you is a liability. It's not something that's going to put money into your pocket. When you understand this principle, you can begin to operate in a different way to create financial independence. And there's something that's known as the inequality gap. A lot of people complain and they say that the inequality gap is not fair. And for any of you guys that are unfamiliar with this term and you don't know clearly what the inequality gap is, what it is it's the idea that 1% of people own roughly 99% of the money on the planet. And the other 99% of people on the planet own 1% of the money. That's what the inequality gap is. It's something obviously that sounds very unfair from the get-go, and politicians actually use this very commonly to point at wealthy individuals and blame them for the problems of the inequality gap. But I'm going to tell you something very clearly. That's a distraction. And the inequality gap, as unfair as it seems, is absolutely fair. What's unfair in reality is that you are not taught how to become the 1% in schools. But we live in the day and age of the internet. There's podcasts everywhere you look. There's books that you have easy access to thanks to the printing press. And you can go online, through many different kinds of devices, and you can look up and get access to virtually any kind of information that you want to. So your access to the information is not limited. You just have to ask the right questions. What's unfair is when you go to school early on in life, you are taught to be an employee for a company. That's exactly what you learn in school. You learn to specialize. And that's so ingrained that even once you go through the free portion of schooling in America and you graduate high school, the advice that you commonly hear is you should then go to college and pay for your schooling to get specialization, to get a degree and earn a very specific kind of job. That is not, in my opinion, a good idea. And that's what I think you're going to discover after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that is a game plan that's going to keep you working until you're 65 years old. It is a game plan that the 99% of people that share only 1% of the money follow. And it's because they don't know any better. It's because they wasn't taught any kind of alternate path in school. But very simply, if you want, you can join the 1% at any time. And you only need two things. You need to know how to do it, what path you need to walk to follow the the 1% and truly create generational wealth for yourself. And secondly, this is equally as important, you have to have the discipline to see it through. It's not necessarily easy. It requires discipline and sacrifice. Here's why the inequality gap exists. The reason why 1% of people have 99% of the money and why I say it's not unfair is because of the principle of buying assets and not liabilities. The largest amount of time it will take you to buy an asset is the time that it takes you to buy your very first asset. By definition, when you get an asset, you're now making more money than you were before. You hear people tell you all the time, your home is your greatest asset. But in reality, most people's home is, not an asset for them because it takes money out of their pocket. They get a mortgage on the home, they pay for that mortgage themselves, and it's not something that is generating money. However, suppose you go out and you buy a home, you rent it out to other people for more than what your mortgage is, that's now putting money into your pocket. You now truly own an asset. It very likely might take you a long time to get that first asset because you're going to be making less money then than at any other point in your life after you own that asset, if everything else stays the same. So, in theory, if you continue on the same path that you've been on, if you continue allocating the same amount of money towards buying assets that you were before, and you also add to it a portion of the money that you're generating in addition from owning your first asset, it now takes you less time to get your second asset. Once you do, you're now making more money than before when you owned one asset. If you stay the path once again, because you're making more money, because you're investing more money, it now takes you less time to get your third asset. You can see the snowball effect that ensues from this. Once you have 10 assets, it really doesn't take you that long to get the money to buy your 11th asset. Once you have 100 assets, it especially doesn't take you long at all to get your 101st asset. When you walk down this path, the longer you walk down it, it becomes easier and easier and easier, which is in direct competition with the path of working a job until you're 65, because your body's going to age, and as you get older, working that same job, especially if it's a physical job, is going to get harder and harder. So the most important point along the way to walking this alternate path is the very beginning. It's the hardest part. The hardest part is the amount of time that it takes you to get your first asset. Because in theory, as you walk down the path, it's going to take you less and less time each step along the way as you get new assets to keep the snowball rolling down the hill. Most people never own their first asset in life because they don't have the discipline to see it through. If they do know this secret about buying assets and not liabilities, you're gonna have friends that are buying the new car, that are going on vacations, that are upgrading their homes, you name it, guys. Liabilities are marketed to us everywhere we look in life. And you're gonna watch all of your friends as you're walking down this path do the things that you wanna do. But the truth is, you're going to have to look at the financial situation in your life and the money that you have as something that you're not willing to part from, because that money has a very important purpose in a bigger picture as to what your life is worth in the future and what you want for your life. So it's going to be hard while you're waiting. It could take you years to get your first asset. And as you watch all of your friends who are not doing the same thing that you're doing, that are not living below their means and they're spending all of the money that they make, it's going to be very tempting. And along the way, if it does take you years, at any point you can make a decision to step off of that path and to go back to what you know, to buy the flashy things, because look, yeah, the second you buy that new car, you're going to feel great about it that day. You're going to feel good about it, when you're driving it around, your friends say things to you, but ultimately, I would argue that those are short-term satisfactions. Eventually, you're going to get used to that car. It's not going to feel special anymore. And the price that you're potentially going to pay is a price of knowing true freedom in your life well before your body is too old to really reap those rewards. If you decide that you do want to walk this alternate path, you want to buy assets and not liabilities, keep in your mind and remember that the hardest part is the part in the beginning. It's the time that is going to take you the most amount of time to get your first asset. Once you do that, I promise you, it's going to be empowering. I'm going to give you guys a life hack, which is potentially going to greatly shorten that amount of time in a future video. But for now, what I hope that you understand is build up your confidence level that this alternate path is a very real thing that you can attain if you decide you're going to give it to yourself. That's what this book will help you do. I promise you that. If you pick up this book and you read it, it's going to give you that confidence to make it to that next chapter where you have your first asset and you actually see the fruits of your labors. So that's that's concept number one, what the alternate path is. Buy assets, not liabilities. The other two things that Rich Dad, Poor Dad will teach you is two concepts, like I said, which reinforce that. So the first one is good debt versus bad debt. Robert Kiyosaki explains good debt as being any time that you take on debt that someone else is paying for. And bad debt obviously would then be any kind of debt that you take on which you're paying for. So that goes back to what I said earlier about, you can buy a home, but it's not necessarily an asset. If you buy a home and you have a mortgage and no one else is paying for that mortgage for you, if you're not renting it out to a tenant who's taking over paying for that mortgage and giving you a little bit of money on the top to make it worth your time, that's bad debt. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to buy a home, not at all. I think that's better than renting where you're not going to build equity, but I think there's an even better path than that. You can take on good debt, you can buy a home, and you can let other people pay for that debt, whereas you are going to have money in your pocket every single month, and you're building equity as they make the payments for you. The good debt versus bad debt idea is also something that gives you a very real, concrete statistic to look at, to try and make walking this path more simplified. It gives you another very real step to take. You can look at every single loan that you have in your life and ask yourself, okay, who's paying for these loans? If I have 4 loans, if I have a car loan, if I have student debt, I have a mortgage, and let's say I have like a personal loan that I took out for whatever reason, am I paying for all of those? Am I paying for 3 of those? And maybe the one that's a mortgage is being paid for by someone else? You can analyze at that point how well you're progressing down this path. And also it shows you a very real step that you can take along the way that can bring you closer towards walking down this path successfully. The more loans that you have that you're financing yourself, there's very likely not going to be a way to turn it into good debt. But you can pay it off. The second you pay off that bad debt, that's now money that's not flowing out of your pocket. You have eliminated a liability. So that's the second idea that is expressed in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Good debt versus bad debt, and how to utilize it, how to look at it in your own life to help aid you along the way towards getting on this alternate path. Finally, what I would say is the third, probably most important concept that Rich Dad, Poor Dad teaches is the idea of how you value comfort and security versus how you value being financially independent and stable on your own. Those two ideas are in direct competition with one another once again. When you see your friends buying the flashy things, all the liabilities that I'm suggesting that you try and stay away from, those are the things that are going to make you feel comfortable and secure. But the truth is, in order for you to be financially secure in life, you're going to have to make sacrifices on how you spend your money. You're also going to have to be willing to put yourself in a position of being uncomfortable at times. Those sacrifices that you're going to make, the discipline that you're going to need to have to walk this alternate path, all of that is going to come directly as a result from a willingness to be uncomfortable. Because this alternate path is not anything that you have experience in going down. It's going to feel uncomfortable. Just like anything new that you do in life, you know, when you first start trying to do something new, it's very foreign to you. And this book teaches the idea that it's a better idea to not seek comfort and security, but to grow comfortable with the feeling of being uncomfortable. Because if you can put yourself in that uncomfortable position for long enough, and if you can have the faith that what you're doing is going to pay off in the future, and you know, if you have the mindset of, you know what, forget comfort, forget security, you know, I demand more from my life. I'm not going to seek, you know, what's valuable to me in the short term. I want to be free in my own life. If you can do that, if you can find that line of thinking, and you can really believe in it, and you can feel the fire that charges you to behave in that way and start making decisions based off of that, well, at that point, you're absolutely going to start taking the steps to find financial stability in your own life. So that's the third concept that it teaches. And ultimately, if we look at what's going on from this entire process, you're creating a machine. You are slowly but surely, by buying assets, you're going to create a machine that is earning its own income, which only requires very little input of your own efforts. When you go and you work for a job, you have to trade your time for money. The second you stop trading your time for money, your income is obviously shut off. So when you buy assets, you don't have to continue trading time for money. You are taking the money that you've earned by trading your time, and you're putting it to work for you. And this is a completely different idea. This is an idea of not working for money, but learning to make your money work for you. And as you learn to make your money work for you, as you buy assets, you're going to create a machine that's growing and will produce results that are independent of what you do. It's a process that takes a good amount of time. You know, it takes years to create that machine, but like I said in the earlier part of this video, it's something that is very slow in the beginning, but it absolutely picks up steam, and it's a snowball effect. When you join the 1%, there is a massive snowball effect as you create the machine that's going to earn money independently of you. You can then continue reinvesting that money to buy more assets. and to grow that machine. And eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to create something in your own life that's going to allow you to step off of the path of trading your time for money. That machine will grow to a point where it's going to earn a far larger amount of money than you could ever earn working at any job. And at that point, you've walked the alternate path for long enough for that to become your new path. At that point, you've earned your own freedom in life. And at that point, sky's the limit. What do you want? What do you want out of life? You all of a sudden have the free time to really ask yourself those larger questions. What is the purpose of your life? What do you want to do with your loved ones? What do you want to do with your friends? If you have the freedom now to travel the world, to experience alternate cultures, whatever it is that you want, you're going to be able to do that. And in my opinion, that's a way better thing to live for than to hope that I have my time to myself when I'm 65. So if you feel like this video has been beneficial to you, please take a second to like the video. Please take a second to subscribe to my channel, guys, because like I said, I'm going to give you plenty more videos along the way which can greatly help aid you in this process. I also told you earlier on in this video that I'm going to make you an offer. So when I was making the point that you need to pick up this book and you need to read it, regardless of just hearing my synopsis here in this video, told you I'd make you an offer. And I looked it up on Amazon before starting to record this video, and Rich Dad Poor Dad for a paperback version is roughly 13 bucks, a little bit over 13 bucks. But I tell you what, if you are serious about wanting to go down this path, and if your funds are so tight that you can't even find the $13 to pick it up, as long as you actually know me in person, let me know and I will buy this book for you. I'll put my money where my mouth is, and hopefully the fact that I'm willing to do that, because that's not something that benefits me in any kind of way, to spend my money and buy you this book, but hopefully the fact that I'm willing to do that really gives a lot of credibility to the things that I'm saying and how much I truly believe that it could radically change your life. So with that, I think I also have to say that this is a time sensitive offer. I can't just continue buying this indefinitely for other people. So what I'd say is, if you're really strapped for cash, if you can't make it work, that's okay. First off, come to me, let me know. I'll buy it for you for the first 10 people that come to me and say, hey, look, I'm sorry, things are rough right now, but I hear what you're saying. It makes sense, and I really want to know how to go down an alternate path in life, and I'm committed to it. And I'd love to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. For the first 10 people that come to me and say that, I'll absolutely buy this book for you guys. So thanks for being here. That wraps up this first video. I hope it was very enlightening. I hope it makes you think in a different way that enables you to hopefully start making some decisions that impact your life down the road in a way that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So I guess with that, I'm out, guys. I look forward to showing you how else I can help you in the next future videos. Take care.